In this section, we're going to take a look at how well this work holds up some 40 to 50 years after it was originally first put out to the world. Let's start with someone who was virtually totally unknown during the entire time he was with Motown, and that's bassist James Jamerson. Let's take a look at something that Paul McCartney said about James Jamerson, and I think this sheds a lot of light on the caliber and quality of work that bassist James Jamerson actually did. Paul McCartney is quoted as saying, "The biggest influence in my bass playing was James Jamerson, who played on many of my favorite Motown releases." That's something McCartney said during a Q&A session on his website. In an interview with Music Radar back in 2017, he talked more about Jamerson when the interview said that McCartney probably made the bass an acceptable instrument. And McCartney replied, "Yeah, it became a bit more skillful. I wouldn't personally take credit for myself, but thanks for that. But I think James Jamerson, him and me, I'd share the credit there. I was nicking a lot off him." That's the thing, though, McCartney continued. It did become a lot more of a funky instrument. It was becoming more like a drum. The rhythmic possibilities was very exciting, and it gave me something to keep me interested. James Jamerson was virtually totally unknown until the guy that you can see in this particular image, his name is Alan Slutsky, he started doing some work many, many, many decades later after Jamerson had passed to find out who the bass player was, and eventually published this book that you see about the music life of James Jamerson. That got a lot of people interested and aware. Now, by this point, Jamerson had passed many decades previously, and that eventually led to the movie, which I very, very, very highly recommend, called Standing in the Shadows of Motown, which takes a look at the Funk Brothers Band, which we'll talk about in just a couple of seconds. James Jamerson, the work was so good that he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so you can see that acknowledgement right here. But what I think is most instructive is that decades after he passed, Rolling Stone magazine did a list of the 50 greatest bass players of all time, and James Jamerson made that list. They, in fact, actually ranked all the bass players, and James Jamerson came out number one, best in the world all time. You can see that right here. So literally any and all of us who are bass players owe an incalculable debt to the greatness that was James Jamerson's playing, performance, recording. And as any of us who've worked on it know, it's not just the notes and the rhythm. There is so much more to being able to play at the highest caliber in the world. And yes, it is true that the bass player from Motown was credited as being the best bass player in the world. Example number 2, Motown had their ladies' man, and that was Marvin Gaye, and you can see some images of Marvin here. And in particular, when they paired Marvin up with Tammy Terrell, oh my gosh, record sales went crazy, and I think you can imagine why. In the early 1970s, Marvin Gaye said that he wanted to change directions and record something that's more socially conscious. Berry Gordy opposed that very, very strongly. So Marvin got the people involved, recorded it, quite frankly, secretly, without Motown's bosses knowing about it. They eventually released it. It sold 100,000 copies right away, sold another 100,000 copies right away. By that time, the Motown bosses realized, oh yeah, we actually have something good here. So they accepted this new album that came out and the career change that Marvin Gaye had done. This is one of a number of people, Marvin Gaye being the first one, who did extreme career changes during their work in Motown. How does this hold up now, all these decades later? Turns out Rolling Stone magazine also rated the 500 greatest albums of all time. And What's Going On by Marvin Gaye is included in that list. As you can see here, it ranked number 1 greatest album of all time. So in terms of something holding up, holds up extremely well. Nothing else is beating this. So want to show a short video of Marvin Gaye here in Chicago, actually, singing a little bit from What's Going On, and you'll be able to see the bass player right next to him is James Jamerson. This is also the only color clip I'm aware of Jamerson playing. But there's more than that. You'll be able to see Eddie Bongo right in front, and Uriel Jones is on the drums, Earl Van Dyke is on keyboards. This is like the all-star of all-stars, but these are just the Motown regulars from the Funk Brothers. This album changed everything, not just within Motown, though it did, but many, many, many other artists reported that this changed how they did everything. So I want to play a short clip of Marvin Gaye performing What's Going On, and as I said, you'll be able to see all these phenomenal musicians around him who are Motown regulars. Don't think of this as an example of Marvin Gaye singing What's Going On. Think of this as a masterclass in absolute genius.
Everybody thinks we're wrong, they do. But who are they to judge us? Simply cause our hair is long. People, you know, we've got to find a way to bring some understanding here today. Pick it nice, pick it size. People don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me, so you can see what's going on. What's going on? Yeah, what's going on? Wanna know what's going on?
If we look at another example that holds up extremely well, the person with the most Grammy Awards for male artists is not Michael Jackson, it's Stevie Wonder. He's won 25 times and been nominated more than 70 times. There is no other individual male artist even close. In terms of best in the world for a male artist, Stevie Wonder is the obvious champion. Another one that isn't as widely recognized is the in-house band for Motown known as the Funk Brothers. In that previous picture where you saw Alan Slutsky surrounded by a number of musicians, those musicians are the Funk Brothers. The Funk Brothers played on more number one hits than the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Beach Boys, and Elvis combined. They didn't get their credit initially, and it was only in 1971, you gotta remember they've been playing since 1959, where they very first were acknowledged for their contribution, and it was on an album by Valerie Simpson. That's one of the reasons I like Valerie Simpson's work a lot. She actually acknowledged the musicians. For their work in the movie Standing in the Shadows of Motown, the Funk Brothers won a Grammy Award. What makes this so remarkable is they had not played together for some 30 years. So I want you to imagine a really simple situation. The work team you have now disbands, doesn't do anything together as a team for 30 years, comes together 30 years from now, does one job, and wins the big award. That's what the Funk Brothers did. That's how good they were. So several of these, there are more, but several of these hold up extremely well when compared to what has happened since then. Many of the names in Motown, some well-known, like Marvin Gaye, some not as well-known, like the Funk Brothers, have done work that stands the test of time. And if there's one absolutely strongest, most acid test, that's it. And over and over and over again, the quality produced by Motown Records stands up to that test and does it as well as it can be done anywhere in the world.